The Untouchables. Who were they and why they became untouchables? By Baba Sahib Ambedkar. Part 2, Chapter 6. How did separate settlements for broken men disappear elsewhere? That the feudals of Ireland and the altitudes of Wales were broken men is true. That they lived in separate quarters is also a fact. But it is also true that the separate quarters of those men disappeared and they became part of the settled tribe and were absorbed in it. This is somewhat strange. The broken men, according to the theory set out before, were given separate quarters outside the village because they belonged to a different tribe and therefore to different blood. How is it that then they were absorbed by the tribe later on? Why such a thing did not happen in India? These are questions which are natural and which call for an answer. The question is integrally connected with the process of evolution through which primitive society came to be transformed into modern society. As has already been said, this evolution has proceeded along two different lines. One marked by the transformation of primitive society from nomadic into settled community. The other marked by the transformation of primitive society from tribal to territorial community. The question with which we are immediately concerned relates to the second line of evolution, for it is the substitution of common territory for common blood as the bond of union that is responsible for the disappearance of the separate quarters of the broken men. Why did primitive society substitute common territory for common blood as the bond of union? This is a question for which there is no adequate explanation. The origin of the change is very obscure. How the change was brought about is, however, quite clear. At some stage, there came into being in primitive society a rule whereby a non tribesman could become a member of the tribe and become absorbed in it as kindred. It was known as the rule of ennoblement. This rule was that if a non tribesman lived next to the tribe or married within a tribe for a given number of generations, he became their kindred. Mr. Seabaum gives the following rules for a non tribesman becoming a tribesman as it was found in the Welsh village system. Well, run. Residents in Cymru, which is Wales, according to the tradition of South Wales, made the descendant of a stranger at last, a Cymru, would not until continue to the ninth generation. 2. Intermarriage with innate Cymraces, generation after generation, made the descendant of the stranger an innate Cymru in the fourth generation. In other words, the original stranger's great grandson, whose blood was at least 7/8 Cymric, was allowed to attain the right to claim the privilege of a tribesman. Should not such a thing have happened in India? It could have, indeed, it should have, for a rule similar to that which existed in Ireland and Wales also existed in India. It is referred to by Manu. In chapter 10, verses 64 to 67, he says that a Shudra can be a Brahmin for 7 generations if he marries within the Brahmin community. The ordinary rule of Chaturvarna was that a Shudra could never become a Brahmin. A Shudra was born a Shudra and could not be made a Brahmin. But this rule of antiquity was so strong that Manu had to apply a rule of untouchability to the Shudra. It is strong, and it is obvious that if this rule had continued to operate in India, the broken men of India would have been absorbed into the village community and their separate quarters would have ceased to exist. Why did this not happen? The answer is that the notion of untouchability supervened and perpetuated difference between kindred and non-kindred, tribesmen and non-tribesmen in another form, namely between touchables and untouchables. It is this new factor which prevented the amalgamation taking place in the in which it took place in Ireland and Wales, with the result that the system of separate quarters has become a perpetual and a permanent feature of the Indian village. The end.